Hey all, it's Dr. Greg. There are some sound glitches in this episode. Brian sounds like he's talking from the inside of a cave, but otherwise the episode's really good, so stay tuned. Is your self-esteem in the dumps? Well, if so, you are not alone, and we're going to help you with that. But here's the twist. Sometimes low self-esteem might actually help you, and being confident or overconfident might do more harm than good. We're going to take a closer look at self-esteem and confidence, what it is and what it isn't, and why everything you've heard about it might be wrong today on Off the Couch. And welcome to Off the Couch, where psychology meets everyday life. I'm Dr. Greg, case-on psychologist, here with Brian Gomez.
Monday, guys.
Producer. And we're also here with Noah on the board. Hi, Noah.
What's up, guys?
We've only got a few more weeks with Noah until Leo is back to his little shack in Ithaca, New York.
That's right.
But let's start off. I'm going to do a psychic reading with you, Noah.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. I'm going to just, let me do this. Here it is. Noah, I think you appear more confident and self-assured to others on the outside than you feel on the inside. True or false?
How did you know that?
Because that is what we call a Barnum statement. A Barnum statement is something that feels deeply personal and accurate, but is actually something that applies to everybody. And this is something that's very commonly used in horoscopes and fortune telling and personality tests. I hate that it's used in personality tests. And it actually comes up when I read people the results of their personality tests, and I have to say, oh, yeah, here it says you're more confident and self-assured to others on the outside than you feel on the inside. And then I have to tell them, that's actually a Barnum statement. That's true for everybody.
Are you sure it's not just because I'm a Libra?
Well, I mean, the fact you're a Libra makes you cool because we share that. But it's because this applies to everybody, but it feels deeply personal and it feels accurate for all of us. So when someone gives us a reading like that, we think, this is right. Oh, they know me. And it gives you that illusion of insight and accuracy. But here's why I wanted to read it. Because that experience of feeling more confident or appearing more confident and self-assured to others on the outside than you feel the inside is so universal. So we have to start with that concept that what we see on the outside is not necessarily what we feel on the inside. But why did I even want to do this topic of self-esteem and confidence and overconfidence? Because this week I saw like several conflicting research articles, and they weren't really conflicting, but you'll see some of them are about low self-esteem and some of them are about overconfidence, and they're a little bit different. Generally, we judge self-esteem to be more of a personality trait, like more about how you're judging your whole self, and we see confidence as maybe how confident you are to do something. But that isn't necessarily what we're going to be talking about, because the confidence we're talking about is a sort of overarching confidence that sometimes we see in people that they tend to exude at all times. And that could be conflated or misinterpreted for self-esteem. But we're going to be looking at those things. So we saw some conflicting research, and the first thing I saw, this is like as typical as it comes. We talked about this before. This was an article in a Spanish journal, Revisita de Comunicación, and I actually posted, by the way, a link to the university, which is in Barcelona. I posted a link in English that basically summarizes the article. In fact, I love this university's English website because it had so much good information on it. So you could follow that through and take a look at it. But this particular research, it was actually two universities in Barcelona. They looked at 1,000 Spanish adolescents, 12 to 18, and they focused on Instagram and TikTok and their social and emotional impacts. Well, this is as normal as it comes, because what they found out was that girls' psychological being is worse than boys as a result of using TikTok and Instagram. I mean, are we surprised by that? Yeah, this is as normal as it comes. Girls feel more observed and pressured and need more external approval on these things. And we see what this happens is it brings up something. I'm just going to keep throwing out I'm going to throw out concepts here if you don't mind. But this brings up the mental health myth that somehow other people are mentally healthier than us, or what we call the social media illusion that other people's lives are better than us. Do you have this one? Because you're a heavy user of the gram, aren't you?
Yeah, and I mean that's true for a lot of people. I feel like we have gotten so used to making sure that we display our life in like the most perfect way possible, the most picture perfect way possible on social media. That like most of the people that are making it seem that perfect, there is something horribly wrong in the background,
I've often thought that, like all the travel videos you show me of them whispering making cookies.
Or the perfect kind of that you see, like they're just like happily ever after that you're like, oh, there's something. Yeah, so I mean, I see it. It's kind of sucky that we've all gotten so used to pretending our lives are so beautiful and perfect. But it is nice when you do see vulnerable people actually talk about stuff and you're like, that's something I can relate to.
And I think it is something we can relate to. I think, in fact, there's a concept I wanted to talk about, which is upward
Comparison versus downward comparison. And when we look at social media, if we do come across someone who has it worse than us, we're typically looking and doing a downward comparison when we think, oh God, that person really has it tough. But we rarely compare ourselves to those people. We feel more for those people, but we don't think, oh, there, but for the grace of God go I. If we do, sometimes we may feel morally superior. It might even kind of lead us astray, or may make us feel bad about them, which could be very bad. There's also the concept of upward comparison. Do you look at social media, Noah?
I try and stay away from it, actually. I've got social media, but I don't have it downloaded on my phone because I find if I have it on my phone, I'll check it way too much. So I really only check it every once in a while on my computer.
That's such a cool thing to do. I never thought about doing that. Not that I'm going to.
That's the Libra in you. That's the smart man right there. Well, we can't say I'm just even joking saying it's the Libra because I'm sure lots of Libras look at Instagram. But it is, because when we look at social media and we look at people, we generally look at a curated life. We look at them having much better lives. And so we engage in a concept called upward comparison.
Upward comparison is really bad because it makes us feel especially bad for who we are, because we're looking at someone whose lives we see as better than ourselves and think we have it worse. But this is more typical of what we do. Really what we say is if you're going to compare yourself upward, like you're going to look at people who have it better than you, it's actually a good idea to compare yourself downward at the same time, to say, you know what? I have it worse than some people, but I have it better than some people too, and maybe I need to just focus on my own life. And that's probably the way to go. TikTok algorithm and gender roles are kind of interesting to me because TikTok, of all of them, really pushes gender roles in their algorithm. So girls receive beauty and fashion content more, and they feel negative body image pressure because of it. They see all these images, where the boys might get more content around sports and gaming and hey dude. I'm sure they get other stuff too, but that's just what these researchers found, that there was a very definite gender gap in content. Maybe it was just Spanish content. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I do see that there has been a rise. I mean, we've talked about it with men having to fit into this. Remember Max? Maxing? Yeah.
It's a previous show. You can look it up. It is disturbing.
But it's like kind of nice that like the guys are having to deal with what the girls have been dealing with, with that pressure to look a certain way, to behave a certain way. It's like now the men are feeling it,
Yeah, I wish they weren't. I mean, I miss those days when guys could just have huge top bellies and scraggly ears. And, and people are like, oh, he's sexy.
Well, I mean, in gay culture, we kind of have those,
We have those?
like the standards we have to kind of fit into too.
Oh my God, gay culture is bad, bad, bad. I've often thought, just this is a total side venture here, but in the gay culture, because their love objects are men, they try to please men who tend to be more visually focused. And when you've got women, gay women, their love objects are women. So they are probably focused more on content of the person, more on who the other person is. So it tends to be a little different in that particular way.
No wonder, like, there's beautiful women that go out with, like, not the best looking guys, not the most in shape guys.
That is true.
Wow. Huh.
That is true.
The more you know.
The more you know. So, okay. So
Perceived social media effects. Girls are more critical of social media's impact on well-being. That good for them. Don't know why I included that here. But Instagram users value organization and group belonging. So Instagram users like the group aspect that Instagram brings you, and TikTok users like the expression that TikTok brings them. They can express themselves, and they look at it for adapting to norms. That adapting to norms is actually a piece here. Like they want to look at TikTok and say, what is everyone else doing? How can I copy them? That's a key part of adolescence. Let's face it.
That's true, because most people will go on, like, the stuff that gets on Instagram has already been on TikTok, Like, Instagram gets to the left, like, what already is. It seems like, yeah.
Oh, I like Instagram.
I do too. Yeah. Grammar instead.
Yeah. I like the the artistic, pictures and the little captions. And I can't dance, so I could never, like when TikTok was taking app was all about dancing, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm excluded from this app completely. That was my attitude.
Same.
Did you ever try it?
A dance?
Yeah.
Dude.
Can we go back to old DrGreg TikTok and find some of your filling in?
Well, I can guarantee you won't find it. But this is, I mean, I have to laugh about me. I don't know if I ever said this before. That I was a character at Disneyland. And I probably shouldn't talk at school, but they would put me in shows. They would put me in parades and different things, but they would always put me in a non-dancing part because I couldn't do it. And then they did put me in a show, in a costume. I don't want to say, because there's a costume who's allowed to screw up all the time and just make fun of himself and keep going. And that costume is what I did in those shows.
Was it Goofy?
I don't know. Might have. I can't say.
Got it.
So anyway, enough of that. Enough for me not being able to dance. It was a painful part. I mean, some of us got it, some of us don't. I just don't.
But this was something I knew about myself, and I didn't feel bad about myself. I didn't have negative opinions about myself that I couldn't dance. So I'm looking here at the next big article I saw this week. I mean, I have to say, these things really cracked me up. This was an article about underconfidence, persistent underconfidence. This was out of Copenhagen and the University of College London. So these are two major institutions, and they publish this in Nature Communications, a major journal. I know we don't want to go too far into the research. All I'm saying is this was a very interesting study, and they looked at the concept of persistent underconfidence, where people don't feel confident. They found that people can feel unsure of their abilities even when they've had proven success. Do we know this to be true? We do know this to be true, that some people who have lots of success still don't feel successful, still don't believe that they can do things very well. And sometimes it takes them a long time to get to that point. This is often linked, and I don't think it's a surprise. Again, this is not a surprise finding in the research. It's linked to anxiety, depression, and the forever imposter syndrome.
I was just going to ask if this is kind of what that was.
Yeah. Okay. And this is basically, they call it distorted metacognitive processing. Do you know what that is? It's thinking about things. At the bottom, and the processing is basically that they're having beliefs about themselves that are affecting these other things going on.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of us deal with that, though, in one way or another.
That's right. That's right. So anxious and depressed individuals ignored their
Confident moments. We know this about depression in general, that when people are depressed, they don't focus on what works. They don't focus on their successes. They focus on their failures. Failure is what intrigues them more. So they focus on low confidence events to judge their performance. And the result is they have a distorted, overly negative self-assessment. So then they feel bad.
Sounds like quicksand.
It is quicksand. And how this is related, like self-esteem, self-confidence, I was talking about that little bit of a difference there. But that self-esteem is really this base layer belief of how I see myself. And if I see myself as unworthy, negative, down, then I'm going to be more likely to be depressed and anxious. I'm going to think, with depressed individuals, they often already feel like a failure. And they feel worthless, helpless, hopeless. With anxious individuals, they feel like they had an inability to handle things. Typically, sometimes it can be life, like everything. They just feel generally anxious. So you can imagine how if you have those beliefs that are tied to that, you feel anxiety, you feel depression, then when you actually go to embark on
an activity, you're going to feel low confidence. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, completely. I mean, you kind of need all of the confidence you even have in order to start something new, or else you have to force yourself to do it. Even that forcing yourself is a hard push.
And then you have to force yourself, yeah. Well, that's a good thing to do sometimes. We could talk about that. I'm a big believer of putting the cart before the horse. Sometimes. Like sometimes I just had to go, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have the ability to do this, but I'm going to start this and work on it. And this, I later found out, I'm reading another article here, that is called the growth mindset. Like I didn't have the inherent confidence to do it, but yet I knew that I could tackle this one thing at a time and I could learn along the way.
And I think it says a lot more when you just try instead of not trying at all. Because I feel like you're still winning if you're trying.
Yes, sometimes it doesn't feel that way.
I know. There's a lot of people that never try.
That's right. If you never try, you're in a really safe place. Like, good for you to know that you came out here from New York as a student and, you're out here working and doing things. And that's a big leap to take. You could not take that. And I'm sure you had the option to not do it.
Oh,
good for you. So let's talk about students. Since you're a student, Noah.
Let's do it.
Okay. This was another article I found that I was like, what? My head is spinning around. Too many school students are overconfident. How about that? So this was an article. It was some research published in the journal Educational Psychology, which is very good. But I gave a link to an article from The Conversation, which really breaks it down much more easily because the academic article, it just makes no sense. I mean, it's a hard read. It'll be good for the academics. So they look at confidence versus ability in students. So confidence is actually good because it can predict achievement beyond ability. So confidence can make you take risks that you may not otherwise take. So it's a good thing to have. But overconfidence, which would be too much of it, is widespread, and that doesn't always match actual performance. So some people feel much better about themselves than is otherwise warranted. So they may take the risk. They may do things like enroll in school, or they may take on projects, but then not really have the ability to do them. I think, what are you laughing at?
Because not too long ago, I thought I was great at snowboarding, and I went on the snowboarding trip to only realize, wow, I had only been on like the bunny slopes, if that. And then when I got to the first mountain, I was terrified at the top because I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
So you went all the way to the top?
Mm-hmm. Thinking I could do it.
What now? What?
In Mammoth.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's no green runs out there. I don't even know if there are blue runs off the top. I think it's all black diamonds.
Yep, I busted my ass a lot that day. Let's just say that. I learned that I was not as good as I thought I was. This does not cracking up.
I used this snowboard too a lot back in New York. And when I was way younger, I had a similar situation. This is probably back in middle school, where I thought I was a lot better than I was, and I hopped on a sea lift, not realizing how high up it was going to take me. And by the time you get up there, I mean, you can't ride it back down. That's like the red shit. But having to, get down by snowboarding on it, I kind of overcame the fear, and I was able to go back up to try it again. And eventually that's how I got better at snowboarding. So, well, this is saying DrGreg. Sometimes
You put the car before the horse.
exactly.
Yep, I had a great day the second day, but that first day, my butt was bruised for like a month.
That is good. Well, good for you. I mean, I could imagine. I mean, I don't like. I could go skiing, and I ski. I don't snowboard. And it's funny. I took lessons last time. Oh, let's do a divergence about me. I took a group lesson in Mammoth. And we, it's a group lesson. I took the intermediate because I consider myself intermediate. It's intermediate, advanced, / group lesson, whatever. They split us up because they had like 3 instructors, and they're like, okay, let's split you up. Tell us about how you see and whatnot. Well, I think I may have underplayed my ability because, just me. I don't want to say, oh, I can just handle anything. And everyone's like, oh, I'm all double black diamond and I'm all black diamond. I'm like, oh, I want to stick to the blue runs, Even green is okay. Like, I'm okay. And so they put me with another person. And so we had this cool teacher, Irina, from Russia. And she's, the instructors at Mammoth are crazy good. And they, we were up there, and all I could do, because I didn't always understand what to do. Like, I can't dance, so you can't tell me what to do with my body and me immediately understand it. I just have to copy you. So I just would say, I'll just go behind you. And I was with another person, so there was another skier with me. But she gave me such compliments because she said, oh, you're so athletic. And I'm like, what? And she goes, here, spin around. And then I spinned around. And then she goes, here, do this. And I did that. But I was copying her, which was, I can do. If you show me, I can look at it and do it. But I can't tell my head to do it. So I don't have good confidence, but I can copy, which I know that sounds funny, until it gets into my body, like when you're skiing. So me just going naked up a hill, and going down, I can do it, but I'm probably doing it with the worst form possible. So anyway, I felt more confident after that day.
Sure. Okay. If you were doing what she was doing,
I was copying her. I just want to say, I would just follow behind her. I'm like, well, she good. I get it.
So, Dr. How do we know the difference between when we're being the right amount of confident or when we're being confident?
We're gonna talk about that because I'm not trying to tease it, but at the same time, I just wanted to kind of cut through some of the noise here. So most students are overconfident. Low performers are actually the most overconfident. The low performers are the most overconfident. And less than 10% of high ability students are underconfident. So people with high ability, most of them are confident. So we're starting to look at this, and there's gender differences. Males tend to be more overconfident than females. That's not a surprise, I think. It helps them take risks. And I also thought there was an interesting cultural difference. They looked at papers from this was a meta-analysis, which means it was a study of studies. So they looked at a ton of studies. But they looked at different studies, and they found people in East Asia, and the countries that were represented were Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. People in East Asia tend to be more realistic about their abilities than European people. They tend to be more realistic. Us Europeans are a little bit, let's say less realistic.
This was specifically people from Denmark, Netherlands, Finland, Serbia, and Latvia. So it was those in particular. So not necessarily U.S., but I think U.S. could fit very well into that finding.
Oh, yeah.
So, Noah, to kind of answer, we can't tell you what to do quite yet, but to kind of go to this, we're going to talk about something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. So this is a cognitive bias that individuals with low ability tend to overestimate their competence, while highly skilled individuals may underestimate theirs. In essence, the less you know, the more confident you feel. So I'm going to go through this. For those who are watching the video, I have a Dunning-Kruger effect graphic, but I can explain this to you. Basically, on the x-axis, the bottom is competence, and on the y-axis is confidence. That's the one going up. So it basically shows a line, and it goes from knowing nothing and having low confidence, and it goes very quickly up to the peak of Mount Stupid in this graphic. Very quickly. So people who don't know much think they know a great deal. I found this out a lot. Like in school, like I remember the first day of school in my master's program, that there were students who had such an inflated view of their ability as therapists, as psychologists. I mean, this was at the very beginning, such inflated views. And I was like, I feel like the biggest dummy in the world. I mean, I was hungry for the information, but I didn't have the confidence. I probably was in peak of Mount Stupid too, but my peak was just a little bit lower than some of the other students, I think, because I didn't know enough. But quickly, when someone gets exposed to the fact that they don't know a great deal and they start to see the consequences of their ill actions, the problematic actions, they quickly go to the valley of despair, And then only once they start to gain information and gain skill and gain competence do they go up the slope, what they call the slope of enlightenment, and until they get to expert status, do they get to the plateau of sustainability. So just to explain this again, can you go to the next slide, Noah? Is the knowledge, our confidence and our knowledge in the field are interrelated, but at different points. So if we have no confidence, no knowledge in the field, we will often think, I don't know anything about that. Like if you go, what's prestidigitation? And if you didn't know, you would say, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's magic. Isn't it magic? No?
I don't know.
See, there you go. Good. Excellent.
We're at the bottom right now.
Okay. So then, then you say, I don't know. But then all of a sudden, all the way to the top, I know everything. So it's like all of a sudden, if you start to learn a little bit, you think, oh yeah, that's easy. I can do that. That's no problem. So that hill is very easy to climb. So people can think they have all kinds of knowledge when they have very little. But it's only once they face the behavioral aspect that they can see that there's more to this than I thought. They start gaining knowledge and they think, oh, shoot, I'm never going to understand this. I remember thinking about this in school, and I still have that feeling sometimes. Then we think it's starting to make sense. I remember that feeling in school. And then I got much better, and I'm like, oh, and I agree with this. Trust me, it's complicated. Like I can look at things, and that's why I would like to do this podcast, because I do want to explain these concepts in the easiest way possible. But one thing we could have done very easily in this particular podcast was to tell you, oh, self-esteem, here are the 10 things you can do. I bet I would get 1 million clicks. I mean, here you go. Like, here are the 10 things you can do. Good. Because everybody's hungry to improve self-esteem. But sometimes we want to actually improve something else, not self-esteem. But we also want to improve our competence. I saw an economist talking about the latest fiasco going on economically in the world, where someone imposed a bunch of tariffs and the whole economic system all but crashed, or is having a lot of problems. And he said people have lost confidence in the United States. And he said you can't have confidence if you don't have competence. And I'm like, wow, that is the Dunning-Kruger effect. So sometimes people with high confidence don't have competence. Actually, it takes a long time to become an expert. And this really bothers me because in our world, there seems to be kind of this anti-intellectual, anti-elite, people who go to college thing. Do you hear this out there? I hear it all the time. Yeah. That you can't be, experts. Stop listening to them. We know better. And goes to something. Remember, we did a show on common sense. And what did we find out from that common sense show, Brian?
It's not so common. Common sense is different for everyone else.
That's right. Common sense is not common. Common sense is not something that we all share the same opinion about. We think something is common sense to us, but that means you may have very different opinion. You may say that's your common sense.
But does that put up a fight with science?
Science isn't trying to get common sense. They're trying to look for the answer and whatever the answer to the question is. And that is done through a rigorous process. And they don't always know what the answer is going to be. And one thing I love about science is they could say, okay, here's the answer one day. And then they go, well, we found out these new information. So we're amending our previous answer. Like, it was actually maybe this over here. We thought it was that, but maybe this over here. That they're actually open and flexible to new information, as opposed to having a fixed mindset about how things should be.
Makes sense.
All right.
I feel like you talk about that a lot, too, about having a flexible mind instead of being rigid.
I do. I guess right. I actually think that is the key to health right there. It's cognitive flexibility. And here is just we're looking at overconfidence can lead to failure from making risky decisions, and underconfidence can lead you to have missed opportunities. So the goal is, what do you think?
Like a balance?
A balance. Wow. Very good. Balance confidence. Yeah.
There's my overconfidence right there.
Aim for realistic self-perception to foster better learning and outcomes. Aim for keeping it kind of in the middle. Like, you don't know. That's a tough thing to do.
And it's okay not to know stuff.
Oh my God. It is preferable. It is preferable. I was reading a physician. I was reading, I don't know what article I was reading, and it was really, it's not about any of this stuff, but I kind of laughed when I saw this. The guy said, he met a physician at a party, and he's like, what's the blah, blah, blah? And he goes, the correct answer is, I don't know. And he said to the guy, the real experts are the nurses. If there's a nurse here, you can ask her.
That's usually true,
I love that honesty,
There's nothing wrong with just admitting that, it doesn't make you stupid.
But that physician, that doctor, knew what he didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was not looking at that as a cut about who he was as a person.
But if anything, that was the smarter answer.
It was the smart answer. I love it. So confidence can lead you to have better performance because you can attack things. But being overly confident can lead to underperformance because you think you'll be okay. And I think this is true for school. Noah, tell me about this. When I would look at the beginning of the semester and I'd say, indeed, I won't have to read this. I can study this later. This will be okay. And then I get to the night before the test and I'm trying to cover an entire textbook and lectures, and I'm like, my head is blowing up.
Yeah, I've been there a few times myself. It definitely gives you a bit of humility to realize that you're not as smart as you thought you were on certain subjects. But, I mean, again, what we were saying, kind of unintentionally putting the cart behind the horse and forcing yourself to, or cart before the horse. Is that what I said?
Yeah.
And forcing yourself to learn a lesson, which is that you do need to study hard in order to succeed at school.
Look at you, because that is exactly what you want to do. You want to learn the lesson. That's where failure can serve you. You can learn the lesson by failing. And if you fail and look at it as what you link to what you did versus who you are, that's going to help you, because next time you can learn and do something different.
Right. I do know a lot of people who, this was more so in high school, who didn't do too well and just kind of wrote it off as, well, I'm just not a smart person, or I'm not a good test taker, or I'm not this, and that. And it seemed like they didn't really want to improve, or they didn't think that they could improve.
No, and in fact, like, I know that sometimes with tests, I can get a little test anxiety going on. And then if you know that about yourself, you can be a little bit, you can use some extra effort to actually do okay on the test. But yes, if you write it off, you don't even try.
Yeah, or if you make the excuse of, like, I'm just not a good test taker, it's like, well, there are things you can do to become a good test taker, right?
Like what?
Well, just how, like, how you learn, I'm big on, like, I highlight specific words of certain things to memorize. It just brings, for me, that's how I work. Highlighters are like my lifesavers. Different colors of highlighters.
Highlighters are great, and what I love is I'll highlight an entire article and never read it again. But the fact, I went through it and focused on it and read, I mainly focused on the article more. So that act actually helps me to take in more information.
Yeah. To where I am just retaining certain clips of it to just get through it.
Yeah. There you go. There is a confident performance relationship. Confidence or success usually boosts future performance. So if you've done it well in the past, you can focus on that to do more of that in the future. That's actually a very good thing to do, to boost your self-esteem by looking at the actual good things you've done in the past, the successes you've had. But high confidence can reduce your effort if you're already prepared. So this is kind of tough. Like if you think, I got this is no problem. It's actually good to have a little bit of insecurity. Like, I did this before, it's good. But it's really okay to say, but, I
still need to worry.
I need to brush up. That might help me a bit. I need to put my head in that space. And overconfidence is a misplaced belief in performance ratings. So overconfidence are people who just think that they can do okay no matter what. They actually had a weird study that they had people skip rope with a rope, and then they told people, okay, now we're going to bring you a tougher rope to work with. So this rope is more difficult. And I love this. It is the same rope, by the way. And they found the people, even when they were told it was a tougher rope, they had lower confidence and higher performance. Because they were like, okay, I got to really concentrate and really work harder.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was kind of interesting. So actually thinking, oh, this is going to be a little bit of a challenge, actually helps people perform better. So if you're too confident, you're not going to do as well. Self-doubt prompted extra efforts to have better outcomes. So, okay. Confidence helps you take risks, set high goals, but unchecked confidence can hinder performance, and accurate self-assessment is the key. Thank you, Brian. You got that. Overconfidence comes from overestimating your abilities, underconfidence from overestimating others' abilities. And that goes back to that upward comparison. When we look at others and we think, oh, they really got it going on, they can really do X, Y, and Z. I mean, they might have it, but what you're doing is telling yourself that you should be the same. And that's not a helpful thing to do. So they actually looked at mountain race predictions and versus performance anyway. They found they did all these studies and they kept finding that confidence had its limits. Too much confidence screwed people up. Too little confidence screwed people up. That you really needed to have kind of this right amount of confidence. Yeah. Okay. So, calibrated confidence. That's what we're talking about. It has better decision making. And you got to aim to know your own strengths and accurately assess the field. And this goes to mindset about things. We have to have this flexible mindset. I actually found another article. I mean, I couldn't believe this stuff. That mindset does affect confidence. And the bottom line is that having that fixed mindset that we talked about, being rigid about things, thinking you already know all the answers, that you're the answer, that you have common sense. And we need common sense solutions. Those are the people that make the biggest mistakes. I mean, it's, that we can't listen to the scientists. Let's fire all the scientists. These are the people that make the biggest mistakes. I mean, we're seeing it play out before our eyes nationally. And so we see that in other ways too. But it's a very interesting place to be. So people who believe intelligence is fixed are more likely to be overconfident. But growth mindset individuals tend to assess their abilities more accurately. I guess I'm embarrassed to say I had that but the reality is my insecurity really helped me a lot with my field, because my insecurity and my hunger to know things helped me to get a PhD and not stop at a master's degree, which most therapists do. Most therapists will get a master's degree. And that's like a very easy thing to do. I actually took the master's test as a lark without studying for it and passed, because that's basically what school was. It was like studying for the test. That wasn't a hard thing to do. But I got the doctoral license and everything because I was so hungry and thought I needed more training. I needed more knowledge. And I still feel that way. I still have to constantly learn. I'm still taking continuing education because I still feel like I'm really behind the curve.
And your field of studying changes a lot along the way.
Does it? It does? Yeah, the terms change.
Or the culture. Things in life kind of shift a little, so you kind of do have to.
But I'm kind of interested in the knowledge. Kind of is held pretty well. But I do agree that terms change, culture changes. Sometimes I use the wrong word for this or that. People get kind of upset. I'm like, whatever, dude. Like, So I had that when I was young. I remember people telling me, they come from a different point of view, and they would tell me I was wrong because of the point of view I had. And then so I really am careful not to tell people that now. So. Yeah, people who believe intelligence is success, I went over that. Overconfidence can hinder learning and lead to poor decision making. So these are all things that, we want to look at. Confidence should be calibrated with your actual ability. And this goes to the concept of self-esteem, going all the way back to the beginning, folks, how you feel about yourself and your overall worth. And if your self-esteem isn't great, it is good to work on, because you do want to feel worth. And to feel worth, you have to actually look at the beliefs that drive your worth. If you're thinking that you personally are worthless or helpless, unable to do things, those are key beliefs that you need to work on.
Yeah, I do give my mom a lot of props for that, for instilling certain beliefs about myself as a kid, to where, like, yeah, I don't feel like I have low self-esteem because of it, It sometimes sounded like, oh, she was just blowing smoke up my ass, But it helped over, my life, so far.
Well, that's good. I came from Gen X, and we all have low self-esteem because our parents told us we were to be seen and not heard, and by the way, not even seen. And get out of here. I don't think that's too far from wrong for that generation. So we didn't get the praise. What's going on now with Gen Z? You get praise, or are you told to go away?
I think my parents did a pretty good job. We'll see that if you listen. No, I've got pretty high self-esteem, I would say. But I think a lot of it came from doing hard things and kind of challenging myself and pushing the boundaries of what I thought I was capable of, to kind of prove to myself that I was worth it.
So that, good for you, because that goes to the concept that I really want to give to people, not self-esteem, but self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is your belief in your ability to do something. And if you can hook into that concept over self-esteem, that will give you true confidence. That is the confidence that's realistically based. That is the confidence that you can do things. It's your belief in your ability to do things. So if you go out, you go up to the mountain at the top of Mammoth or wherever you went, Noah, and then you went down, you're like, oh, shoot, and this, going all the way to the top is never advisable for beginning anything. But, I don't know why people don't see that. You get on the gondola and off you go.
I thought it was good.
Well, yeah, halfway. Well, I mean, why don't you go all the way to the top?
There was no halfway. It just went all the way straight up.
Oh, it was halfway. You guys didn't notice, sir.
No, I don't know what one we were on, but it just did not stop.
But anyway, you're going out, you get scared about things. But if you go, okay, I learned from that. I'm going to go try this again. And your body learns, doesn't it? It learns quickly.
Oh yeah. Then the next day was fine, but that first moment, I was like, it's high. Like even looking down the hill, I was like, oh, how is this gonna happen?
Yeah. Now what I suggest when you're seeing this is probably a good lesson for life. Just look at what's in front of you. Like, look what's in front of you and kind of know where you're going. But if you look too far ahead, it's just going to make you panic.
Yeah.
And that was the same for school, same for everything. Think, how am I going to complete all these classes? How am I going to pay off these loans? How am I going to do this? If you look too far ahead, you're going to just freeze yourself. That's not a good thing to do. Just
It's overwhelming.
It's too overwhelming. So look at what's going on right now. Self-efficacy, this is what I want to give to you, to everyone, is the belief in your ability to do something. It's a concept pioneered by Albert Bandura, one of my favorites from the past, psychologist, who came up with this concept. But it's basically, it's self-esteem for things. And because we want to start to not look at ourselves as bad or good. That's actually the goal. We want to look at ourselves as just a human being, no different than any other human being in the world. Like we all share this earth together and we're all exactly the same. We don't want to think of ourselves as better than other people or worse than other people. But we can look at our abilities in much different ways. I could not operate the soundboard now. I could learn. I could go over there and sit and learn, but I can tell you with great confidence that I cannot just sit and figure it out right now. I mean, you can't put me on a show, but yet I do think I could learn, but I'd have to watch and all that stuff. That makes sense?
Yeah, it's actually not that hard. I'm really just pushing one button over here.
Oh, gee.
I'd be happy to pretend that it's a lot harder than it is.
Well, it looks like there are probably, no one can see this, but there are probably 100 dials and buttons and knobs and wires and things. I mean, it looks very complicated, so I'm glad you got the one button set up. But yeah, so that's, we want to look at self-efficacy, and that will build our bank of knowledge, and then we'll feel more confident. I actually feel generally confident because I've built a bank of self-efficacy, even though I might have those beliefs I had as a kid, those Gen X beliefs of things not going so well.
I mean, my mom pretty much just kind of instilled that I could do anything I wanted to if I tried. And that kind of stuck with me, and that's why I've done so many different things and just offer it.
I should have given you a little taste of my brain just to like bring everyone down to earth.
I mean, there was some bad flipping, so, It's a balance. I had a really nice, well balanced childhood.
I'm glad for you both. I'm glad for you both. Well, that wraps up the show for today. Thank you so much. I don't say it enough to like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. I should say at the beginning. That will really help us. We're seeing our subscriptions grow quite a bit. It links to the studies. Go to the YouTube page at youtube.com/DrGreg. And if you have any questions, hit us up on socials at Ask Dr. Greg. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, and Noah. Bye, Noah. And bidding you farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.